Wow, so we got Section 9, Hazardous Materials. 27 pages, and hopefully this will help you read through it. It's hard just reading straight and really paying attention. This manual covers the intent of the regulations, hazardous materials transportation, who does what, communication rules, loading and unloading, bulk packaging marking, loading and unloading, hazardous materials driving and parking rules, hazardous materials emergencies, hazardous materials glossary. Introduction. Hazardous materials are products that pose a risk to health, safety, and property during transportation. The term often is shortened to hazmat, which you may see on road signs or to HM in government regulations. Hazardous materials include explosives, various types of gas, solids, flammable and combustible liquid, and other materials. Because of the risks involved and the potential consequences these risks impose, all levels of government regulate the handling of hazardous materials. The Hazardous Material Regulations, HMR, are found in Parts 100-185 of Title 49, Transportation of the Code of Federal Regulations. The common reference for these regulations is 49 CFR 100-185. The Hazardous Materials table in the regulations contains a list of these items. However, this list is not all-inclusive. Whether or not an unlisted material is considered hazardous is based on its characteristics and the shipper's decision on whether or not the material meets a definition of a hazardous material in the regulations. The regulations require vehicles transporting certain types or quantities of hazardous materials to display diamond-shaped, square-on-point warning signs called placards. This section is designed to assist you in understanding your role and responsibilities in hauling hazardous materials. Due to the constantly changing nature of government regulations, it is impossible to guarantee absolute accuracy of the materials in this section. An up-to-date copy of the complete regulations is essential for you to have. Included in these regulations is a complete glossary of terms. Find out where you can get your own copy to use on the job. You can get copies of the federal regulations, 49 CFR, through various industry publishers. Union or company offices often have copies of the rules for driver use. If you have internet access, you can get copies of the federal regulations at the following websites. For online viewing, HTML, go to http://www.ecfr.gov, which is a site where you can view the Title 49 transportation codes. To order publications, visit the Government Printing Office online bookstore at http://bookstore.gpo.gov. Licensing requirements. You must have a valid New York State Commercial Driver's License, CDL. If you're in another state, you'd substitute your state in there. With a hazardous material, you must have a valid New York State Commercial Driver's License, CDL, with a hazardous materials endorsement before you drive any size vehicle that is used in the transportation of any material that requires hazardous material placarding or any quantity of a material listed as a select agent or toxin in 42 CFR 73. Title 42, Public Health, or Part 73, Select Agents and Toxins. So that's, I'm going to read part of that again. Requires hazardous material placarding or any quantity of a material listed as a select agent or toxin in 42 CFR 73. That is Title 42, Public Health, or Part 73, Select Agents and Toxins. New York State issues two hazmat endorsements, Hazmat H and Hazmat Tank X. New York State Vehicle, NYS, Vehicle and Traffic Law, Section 502, parentheses 2, parentheses A, requires that an applicant for an H or X hazmat endorsement shall be at least 21 years of age. To qualify for a hazmat endorsement, you must pass the Hazardous Materials Knowledge Test, and you must also pass federal and state background checks. Driving type self-certification and medical certification. In order to hold the H or X hazmat endorsement, a driver must self-certify to a non-accepted driving type, NI or NA, and provide a current USDOT medical examiner certificate to the DMV. See sections 1.3.4-1.3.5 for information about self-certification driving type and medical examiner's certificates. Written test. You must pass a written test about the federal hazmat regulations and requirements. Passing score is 80%. There is a fee for this test. If you do not pass the test on your first try, you may take it again as often as necessary until you pass the test. However, you must pay the fee each time you take the test. Everything you need to know to pass the written test is in this section. However, this is only a beginning. Most drivers need to know much more on the job. You could learn more by reading and understanding the federal and state rules applicable to hazardous materials, as well as attending hazardous materials training courses. Your employer, colleges and universities, and various associations usually offer these courses. Renewals. Prior to expiration of the hazmat endorsement, you will receive a renewal notice. If you want to renew, by federal and state law, you must reapply for the endorsement so that new background checks can be conducted. You must be fingerprinted every time you renew the hazmat endorsement. See the background checks section below for additional information. You do not have to take and pass the hazmat written test at this time. You must pay for and pass the hazmat written knowledge test within 2 years before you renew your CDL. If you do not pass the test before your CDL expires, your CDL will be renewed without the hazmat endorsement. Background checks. Section 1012 of the USA Patriot Act and Section 501, parentheses 6, of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law require fingerprint-based background checks for all applicants for the H and X hazmat endorsements. The background checks are done to determine whether an individual has a criminal history and/or poses a security threat that warrants denying him or her the authorization to transport hazardous materials. To initiate the background checks, you must complete Form HAZ-44. I plan on looking at that later on here. HAZ-44, parentheses, application for a hazardous materials endorsement, close parentheses. Submit proof of your residency and pay the required fees. Then you must be fingerprinted at an authorized fingerprinting service provider. All Hazmat endorsement applicants, both first-time and renewal, must complete Form HAZ-600. I'll try and look at that later too. Form HAZ-600 and be fingerprinted at one of the designated fingerprinting centers located throughout the New York State. Fingerprinting services are no longer available at DMV offices. Additional information is available at www.dmv.ny.gov/cdl.htm. If you fail a background check, you will be notified that you do not qualify for the Hazmat endorsement. The notice will provide information about appeal options available to you under federal and/or state law. So let me go back. If you fail that test, there are ways apparently to appeal that are available to you under federal and/or state law. All disqualifications take effect immediately. Period of validity. If you pass the written knowledge test and both the federal and state background check, you may be issued an H or X endorsement. The CDL that you receive will show the legend Haz Mat and the Haz Mat expiration date on the face of the document. Although your CDL is valid for 8 years, your Haz Mat endorsement is valid for 5 years from the date that DMV receives notification that you passed the background checks. You will receive separate renewal notices in the mail when it is time to renew each one. Ohs Reciprocity. If you become a resident of New York State and want to transfer a CDL with Hazmat endorsement that you had in your previous state of residence, you must apply for the endorsement. You must take and pass the Hazmat written test in New York State, pay all applicable fees, and then be fingerprinted in New York State so that a background check can be conducted. In other words, you move to New York, you're going to have to take that written test again, for New York this time. You're going to have to pay the fees in New York. You're going to have to be fingerprinted in New York. So basically, it looks to me like they don't have necessarily reciprocity. Basically, you got to do everything you did in the other state. All right, continuous training requirements. The regulations require training and testing for all drivers involved in transporting hazardous materials. Your employer or a designated representative is required to provide this training and testing. Hazardous materials employers are required to keep a record of that training on each employee as long as that employee is working with hazardous materials and for 90 days thereafter. The regulations require that hazardous materials employees be trained and tested at least once every 3 years. All drivers must be trained in the security risks of hazardous materials transportation. This training must include how to recognize and respond to possible security threats. The regulations also require that drivers have special training before driving a vehicle transporting certain flammable gas materials or highway route control quantities of radioactive materials. In addition, drivers transporting cargo tanks and portable tanks must receive specialized training. Each driver's employer or his or her designated representative must provide such training. Special hauling requirements. Some locations require permits to transport certain explosives or bulk hazardous waste. States and counties also may require drivers to follow special hazardous materials routes. The federal government may require permits or exemptions for special hazardous materials cargo, such as rocket fuel. Find out about permits, exemptions, and special routes for the places you drive. The intent of the regulations. 9.1.1. Contain the material. Transporting hazardous materials can be risky. The regulations are intended to protect you, those around you, and the environment. They tell shippers how to package the material safely and drivers how to load, transport, and unload the material. These are called containment rules. 9.1.2. Communicate the risk. To communicate the risk, shippers must warn drivers and others about the material's hazards. The regulations require shippers to put hazard warning labels on packages, provide proper shipping papers, emergency response information, and placards. These steps communicate the hazard to the shipper, the carrier, and the driver. Folks, I think that this paperwork and the hazard warning labels, this is stuff you're going to have to read yourself. In other words, when they give you something, it's going to be in the fine print. You know, there's going to be writing there, and you're going to have to read the paperwork. I don't think in most cases people are going to sit there and verbally explain to you what the issues are unless you ask them. But I don't know that for a fact. 9.1.3. Ensure safe drivers and equipment. In order to get a hazardous materials endorsement on a CDL, you must pass a written test about transporting hazardous materials. To pass the test, you must know how to identify what are hazardous materials, safely load and secure shipments, properly placard your vehicle in accordance with the rules, and safely transport shipments. So identify the materials, safely load them, placard it the right way, and then transport it safely. All right, learn the rules and follow them. Following the rules reduces the risk of injury from hazardous materials. Taking shortcuts by breaking rules is unsafe. Non-compliance with regulations can result in fines and jail. Inspect your vehicle before and during each trip. Law enforcement officers may stop and inspect your vehicle. In fact, I think some inspectors have, at least people who used to do inspecting, I'm not reading right now, have said that sometimes they'll focus on hazmat vehicles, especially if they're looking to get in some inspections real quick. So you definitely want to be on top of your game if you're going to transport hazardous materials. So let me go back again. Inspect your vehicle before and during each trip. Law enforcement officers may stop and inspect your vehicle. When stopped, they may check your shipping papers, vehicle placards, and the hazardous materials endorsement on your driver's license, and your knowledge of hazardous materials. Okay, so the inspection list. Have your paperwork. Be placarded the right way. Make sure your license is up to date with your hazardous materials endorsement, and try and keep yourself knowledgeable. I would study each load that you get. I would think that a good way to do this would be to study the materials that you're transporting with your given load. The loads that you get the most often will be the ones that you've studied the most often, and you'll know those the best. So that would be a job-specific way that you can continue your training, is just study what you carry. All right. I'll continue, Lord willing, the next video this with the next video.